Right. Is this decipherable?
Yes.
That's cool. We were going to have it in a workshop setting. I even brought a document camera, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to work with this laptop. Thank you, Microsoft. But we can still show some of the things because it's, after all, it's not a very big hall, but quite a lot of people actually. I'm impressed. Thank you for coming. Right. Here, one thing we're going to use, surprisingly, is a pack of semolina. So, if anybody has a carton of milk, it can turn into a cooking class anytime. So, let me please start it with a story. I used to work for a public school in Tver. Maybe you heard of the place. It's not very far from here, some 150 kilometers. And at the time, I was the owner of a small language center. We had maybe 80 or 100 students per annum. So not too many, but the business was good. I was doing some translation, and I still had free time. And a friend of a friend of a friend of my mom said, "Oh, look, this public school is looking for an English teacher. They're really struggling. Can you please join them?" And I said, "Okay, I have 15 hours per week, no problem." After all, it was a very interesting experience. So, I had, stop clicking. I had maybe, oh, can you help me? Thank you. Did I do that? Oh, it's working. I'm sorry. So, what I had is 30 students, which is not normal for an English classroom, because usually they divide classes. So, 8, 9-year-olds, well, at least for the next 35 minutes, you have to survive somehow and prevent them from killing each other. Because when they get bored, they can do crazy things. But the kids were nice, and you always say that to parents. So, at the time, I was starting to get interested in calligraphy because my idea behind this interest was if you type letters in your second language, then it's going to stay that way. It's going to be your second language forever, because you just don't do that normally in your first language, at least for the next 20 years, I hope. So, I was doing inscriptions on the blackboard, and I really had this old-fashioned blackboard, in cursive, in longhand writing. And those 8, 9-year-olds said, wait a second, can you really do that in English? How are you linking those letters? We thought you could only type. And that was the moment when it all began for me. Because you don't really miss an opportunity like this, right? They expressed their interest. So I brought pencils, the good ones. I brought in quills into the classroom, and those are very old-fashioned quills. You have to dip them into ink to write, and they were just so excited about it. So here's the exact situation after the first class with quills, and their writing was subgrade, and they had to do some exercises in their copybooks, but it was indecipherable. And when we started practicing with those quills, we had a 45-minute class. Of course, we had mixed tasks. They had to do different things. It was a blend of speaking, reading, and writing. And then, after this class, 7 or 8 girls approached me and said, Mr. Isakov, we are sorry, but we noticed from the schedule you have a gap. You don't have the next lesson, right? No, I don't. Our next lesson is technology, and we have already given out our tasks for today. We have nothing to do really there. Would you mind if we came to your classroom and try to write with those red and green inks? We haven't tried those. So the next thing you know, they're sitting there writing all kinds of stuff in English for the next 45 minutes. I thought, okay, that's not bad. Let's see how far it goes. And for the next 5 months, then I quit. Unfortunately, had some other things to do. Actually, it was a huge and rich translation project, so I quit the school, unfortunately. But for the next 5 months, those kids were doing that over and over and over again. And even the most disruptive students in those big 30 or 32 persons classrooms, even the most disruptive ones were really afraid if I told them, like, okay, you misbehave, you are not getting the quill. You are going to write with your ballpoint pen. Oh no, please, please, no. Right, and why that matters? Actually, to explain you why that matters, why those quills matter, how about we try and model the lesson, the very first lesson that I had with kids. Ready? Unfortunately, we don't have desks here, so you will have to use your imagination at some stage. But oh, there it is. So, can anyone tell me how old is language? When did it begin? What do you know about that? Come on. I'm not going to tell your parents if you didn't know the right answer. So, anyone, just guess. It's no problem. Please?
From the very beginning of time, because we need language to communicate, so we had people, we needed somehow to...
Can you please give me a more exact time lapse in years?
What do we understand under language? Because as I read, there are thought that Neanderthals also could speak, but without saying, only using their movements.
That's a good question. That is a good question. Actually, Neanderthals could speak. We might not understand them if we met them, but they could still speak. So, any other guesses? Just last chance? Actually, it goes back a little further, because language, somewhat close to how we use it, began about 1.5 million years ago, which means that the first speaker was not the first speakers. I'm sorry, the first speakers were not Neanderthals, of course not Homo sapiens, but Homo erectus. They started it. So that was the greatest invention, which led us here, led us to space and all those exciting things. All right, and when did writing begin? I guess more people should know. So, writing, when did it begin?
Homo sapiens?
Well, it actually, yes, that's right. They began with Homo sapiens, but when? So, the beginning of language, 1.5 million years ago.
1 million years.
No. Shorter.
Maya.
Sorry?
No, it's
Mayas?
our
No, Mayas were not the first.
10,000?
Sorry?
Maybe 5,000. 5,000.
6. 6,000. About 6,000 years ago in the Middle East, Sumerians, ancient Sumerians, started it. They used sharp sticks and clay tablets. And that was the very beginning of written language. Everything before that, they were pictures. They were not really writing as we know it. So they started it. Mayans, that's a good comment. Mayans also developed their own system, but a bit later. But to their credit, they did it on their own. So that's cool. Also the Chinese and some other guys, they did it in isolation. And that was cool. And when ancient Sumerians invented writing, humans got a superpower. And I really mean a superpower. Just to come to the same terms about superpowers, what superheroes or supervillains do you know? Superman, what can he do?
Fly.
He can fly.
Strong.
He's strong. Yes.
Laser vision.
Sorry? Laser vision. And X-ray vision, I guess?
Yes, X-ray.
That could be handy, yeah. He could work as an airport security guy. Any other superheroes or supervillains? Batman. Okay, what can Batman do? He's rich.
Fight.
That's just the ultimate superpower.
His superpower is money.
Yeah, that's a good one. Spider-Man, what can that guy do?
Jump.
Flying.
Fly.
Climbing. Yeah, right.
Produce spider's web.
Right, not sure from which part of the Spider-Man, but because in different comic books it's different. All right, so why do you think I call writing a superpower?
Accumulating knowledge.
Accumulating knowledge, that's a huge part of it. But not only. By creating writing, humans were able to defeat space and time, our ultimate enemies. Right? Because our lives are very short, but if you can write something down, you can share it with literally all humanity. Right? And here, kids get very excited. Like, oh, I can already do that! I'm a superhero! Right. and that's true. If we say, Ksenia, Maxim, don't worry, just stay there. So imagine we live in the Middle East some 5,000 years ago, and we are literate. And I grow cattle. I have cows, maybe goats, right? And you make hides, and then you produce clothes, right? So that's a nice business. But we live some 400 kilometers away from each other. And I find, in modern terms, a marketing situation that can be beneficial for us. I cannot go to visit you physically because I need to take care of my cattle, right? But I can use a clay pit and send it with someone who is going in that direction. And of course, this person is probably illiterate at the time, so our secrets are safe, right? We have superpower. People would call it magic at the time. You can transmit your thoughts to distances. Just don't use the word magic to other people. They might get angry about it. So we might end up on a big fire. Don't do that. Just let's use the word technology. How about this? And actually, writing is a technology. Because language, and the winner will have the chance to read about it in the book, language is not something natural. It is a technology. Nothing in our bodies is designed, nothing in our bodies has evolved to produce language. Every part of our body that we use also has some other purpose. And its main purpose. So we just used different parts of our bodies and our smart brains, of course, and then we conjured this wonderful technology that helps us to organize into societies, develop other technologies, go to space, to Mars. Have you heard about Mars? Ooh, this new space mission is so cool. And same thing goes for writing. It's not natural. Actually, it's very unnatural to sit down for prolonged times and use very small hand movement to produce little signs, little inscriptions that help to transmit our thoughts to other people. Right. So, if it's a technology, by the way, could you agree to that? Oh, my business partner supports me. So, if it is a technology, we should, if we want to progress with that, if we want to make it better, we should study it. How do we do that? Because sometimes new wonderful inventions just snap into existence at random. It's an accident. But to make them more advanced, we need to know how the things work, right? So we have medical research, we have fMRI, which is functional magnet resonance imaging. Yeah, I guess that's what it means. And we can learn what's happening in our brains, what's happening in other parts of our bodies when we write. Turns out, a lot. When you are typing, you use like a piece of your brain that is this big, several parts of your brain, right? And then, when you're writing, when you actually put a pen to paper, you are using a piece that is this big. Of course, various pieces. And I would guess so. Right, because I only came here after lunch. Right. So, oh, no, too early for that. As I said, I brought some quills, and if you want, you can come closer to take a look. So, the quill normally has two parts, right? And if you press it against paper, it enlarges, right? Becomes wider, so you get wider strokes. And what forces the ink to go onto paper is the gravity. Ink is holding here on the nib by surface tension, but then when you put it to paper, you don't have to press. It starts creating a line just when you put it on paper and make this line, right? So no effort whatsoever. That's one thing that is cool about quills, because if you're using a ballpoint pen, you have to constantly press it down. And also, a quill supports a more user-friendly palm position, because with a ballpoint pen, you have to hold it steeper, right? While here the angle would be quite shallow. So this helps a lot. You don't get this writer's cramp. If only I had this document camera available. How much time do I get? Oh, that's quite a lot. Didn't quite expect that. Right, and because you're using your cognitive abilities when you're trying to learn a new skill, you have to train your motor cortex to perform new tasks, and the brain is always very hungry. Did you know that more than 50% of energy, meaning carbohydrates, that you consume, goes to brain. It's the biggest energy user, always hungry, right? So your body is protesting against learning new skills. And that's why you want to make it efficient, right? You want to analyze the tasks for your students, and you want to give them sizable chunks that they can swallow. And because just holding a pencil correctly with 3 fingers, this is called a tripod grip. You can Google it, lots of material about that. So, because I get lots of kids who hold a pen like this, sometimes like this, right? But the correct position is only three fingers. That's why I use, from the first classes, from the first lessons, I usually use triangular pencils. They are very handy. So, when you show them the grip, they have to put a lot of effort into maintaining this position, this good grip. They need to track their posture, their overall posture. I'm not going to show it now, not enough time. So, and they still need to track the correct lines. To do that, to help them with that, how about I get a chair?
I can actually hold it.
No, that's too dangerous.
Seriously.
I don't want a cleaning bill. So, oh, by the way, while I'm doing this, we are going to have time for questions, of course, so I'm going to finish shortly. But I would like to encourage you to ask questions by making handwritten notes. And even if we don't have enough time for all participants willing to ask questions orally, I'm going to answer all questions given by handwritten notes on our group. Right, so, Sameline. Of course you can use fine sand, but the problem with little kids, when they are trying to focus on things, they very often start licking their fingers. And getting washed sand is not something easy. Right. So, when you train them on the correct grip, and you think they are ready to start learning the English alphabet, if you work with very young kids. And quite often we get students who don't even feel comfortable about the Cyrillic alphabet. So, what you do, okay, I'm getting a cleaning bill. So, what I do here is I use a ruler or a piece of paper, and I create lines. Just like in a copybook. Just like in a primary copybook. And Ksenia, that's my business partner. Can you give me a hand? Do you know Japanese? Okay, very nice. If you knew Japanese, I would need to ask someone else. Because you know Latin alphabet, you know Cyrillic, right? But you are not familiar with kanas. So, how about you try and produce this little kana for me? Right? It's, but the proportions are right and it's almost identical, despite the size. All right, thank you very much. So, what happens here because your students are already nervous, as you show them the correct posture, you show them the correct grip, you explain them something about letters, they learn the alphabet, they seen it, they maybe sang the song, this alphabet song, but still, they are probably very nervous and trying to maintain the grip and the posture while producing something new for them. Right, let's just take this pressure off of them, give them this semolina board, as I call it, right? And they just use their finger. And this they are familiar with. Of course, you can write things in the air, but it's not the same thing. When they see the result, when you see the result, it works a lot better. Right? So basically, with writing, with teaching writing, that's what you want to do most of the time. You want to analyze the new tasks, and you want to produce sizable chunks that your students can easily swallow. Right. One more thing for everybody, and we might proceed with the questions. Have you heard of the term grip strength? It's something medical specialists use to assess your overall medical condition. If your grip is not strong enough for your age, your weight, right, and if you're exercising regularly, then there's probably something wrong with you. With kids, grip strength also accounts for their development. And with massive use of technology, grip strength is declining in children. And also they lack dexterity. They are not agile enough, right? And there are plenty of exercises, but here's my favorite. What do you call this? All right, this. I have to be careful with this one. All right. And little finger or pinky. Let's call it pinky for now. All right. Please put your both hands on your lap or on the chair in front of you if you are not disturbing anyone. Right? So I'm going to call out 2 fingers at a time. First will be on your left. The second will be on your right, like this. So if I say index and thumb, and you lift them up at the same time. Try it. Index and thumb. All right. Now pinky and middle finger. Oh. All right. And Ksenia, give us something. Victoria, give us something. Pinky and
Ring finger.
Pinky and ring finger. How does this work for you? Well, trust me, as an adult, as a literate adult, you are going to get better in maybe 15 minutes. Kids love it. And they think they're playing a game, but their motor cortex is learning new skills, and they are developing grip strength and dexterity. So try it in your lessons. You might as well learn the fingers. Right. I think we need to finish here and get your questions. We're going to do, right, please say your name. There's a mic. There's a mic.
Oh, sorry. So I have a question mostly concerning fonts. So does the font actually affect the process of learning or remembering information?
Of course, with little kids, you are not going to use Spencerian. It's too complicated, too delicate strokes. There are easy to use fonts that are normally just on the back of your copybook. Of course, sometimes you have to adapt them for a particular age, but use something simple. Don't go into Spencerian. Maybe later. All right. And
one more question here. Hello, my name is Natalia. If we're speaking here about handwriting, my question is, what was your handwriting like when you were a kid? And how did you come to the idea of speaking about handwriting?
My handwriting at school was okay-ish, but my use of handwriting was not right, because I still have this little scar tissue here, and most of people do. And that is not right. That is how I know it wasn't right. I wasn't using my grip correctly. So it was decipherable. All right, that's a good question. Any notes? Handwritten notes? All right. Let's do them one at a time. Can you put your name here? While all right. At school, where my children study, pupils write with quills and ink. Cool. As an expert, maybe you know some secret tricks how to wash their white shirts.
It's really a problem for me.
I can show you later the ink that I use. It's water-based, so it's easier to wash.
But maybe I thought that you know some. Use this liquid and remove this.
Just use proper ink that is easily washable. That is a good question. Thank you, Marina. All right. And while I'm reading this, can we give the mic to anyone else who's willing to ask a question? Nobody.
Just raise your hand and I'll come up to you.
Can I ask a question?
Go on.
Right, so do you think there is any correlation between handwriting and, well, actually this ability to write clearly and then reading?
And that was the point of my talk. Thank you for reminding me.
Can you maybe just clarify that once again?
Of course it does. Actually, you write better if you are not pressed for time, and if you have some time to put pen to paper. A lot of world famous writers do that. Stephen King does that. J.K. Rowling does that. I even did this once with one of my translations. It was a book, a popular science book about mathematics, probability theory, and it had poetry about mathematics. And when I was taking this project, I didn't realize I will have to translate the poetry as well. I never had that experience. And I was sitting for the whole day with 6 lines of poetry, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do with that? Then I took a quill instead of my computer, and it worked magic. Suddenly. Even expert translators who work with poetry said, oh, that was quite good. So, yeah, your writing becomes better.
And how can students actually practice this sort of thing? Like, would you ask them to copy the words that you have, like, prior to that shown to them, or do they copy a text from a book? How could this calligraphy writing be practiced? Do you use tracers?
Copying things is cool, but one of the things that I really like doing is playing with words. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we need to we play a game. Very often with students we play a game. You need 3 players. With 2 it's not interesting. So you have 3 players. One person calls out a letter. For example, Q, and say beginning. We say beginning, end, or middle. And the person has to come up with a word that has this Q in the middle, say. And the person says sequence, right? We write it down. And the first person to get, say, 5 points or 6 points is the winner. And we have the second round. We need to come up with a story using as many of those words from the list, from the first list, as possible. The story has to make sense. It cannot be some kind of gibberish, right? But kids love it. They just love creating those things, and they love writing them down beautifully.
That sounds very attractive. But can I do something like that with my students if I'm not an expert in calligraphy?
Why not?
Can you recommend any resource which I can use as a model, maybe for myself or for students?
Actually, as most of the people here are English teachers, right?
Yes.
As English teachers, you are in a very good position, because on Russian YouTube, there are very few channels, including mine, about calligraphy, right? But in English, there are tons, literally tons of very nice videos with very practical recommendations. Just Google it. I was just going to this. Does this answer your question? All right. Do we still have a minute?
Yep, we do.
All right. Anna Rashko asked this question: when should children start practicing handwriting? Is drawing affecting our brain the same way as handwriting? All right. First part of the question: when? I do not recommend starting to write with pencils or quills, like longhand writing. Typing is okay, as soon as you're happy, as soon as your child is not struggling. If they are interested, just go on. But very fine and normally weak until some point in time muscles in our hands, they develop by the age of, they start developing properly and fast at the age of 7 or 8. So until 7, I would not recommend normally. Using semolina boards, brushes, anything like that is good. Drawing, of course, as soon as your child or your student or anyone is interested in taking a brush, taking a pen, trying to draw something, even if they are just circles, flowers, whatever. They get so much technology. Kids get so much iPad time. They don't really have the opportunity to develop their muscles, and it affects their writing later. They struggle, and so brushes, whatever. Just do it. All right.
Thank you for your presentation and your experience.
Can you please say your name?
Victoria.
Thank you.
So my question is, does writing with quill help the dyslexical students in the case of dyslexia? And have you got know of any researchers on this issue?
There is a growing body of research on making kids more literal and helping them correcting the mistakes they have. What is more interesting is kids with ADHD. They also get better. I had maybe a dozen of students. They were so active, and they couldn't sit in one place for literally for a minute. But with this activity, repetitive actions, right? And they see when they create beautiful things, they just relax and they want to go on. And yeah, of course, using your motor cortex to perform writing helps you to remember things better, like spelling, things like that. Of course, it does. Can we still have?
Yeah, I think we have a moment for maybe the last question, and then we'll be rounding up. Yeah.
And if you want to ask your questions in writing, I will answer them online. Just give me the notes.
Okay. So one last question somewhere.
Можно на русском
Okay.
спрошу. Смотрите, если ребенок леворукий, у него работает, несогласованное полушарие, можно ли его, переучив на другую руку, достичь большего результата в обучении чтению и письму? Потому что есть такое исследование, что ребенок, когда у него рассогласована работа полушарий, и он пишет левой рукой, он не может овладеть чтением нормально. Его переучивают на правый, и у него все, как говорится, поперло. Вот как вы думаете, возможно такое?
Should I answer this question in Russian or English?
На русском.
Хорошо, на русском. Я не читал такого исследования. Насколько мне известно, нарушить работу полушарий можно, работа полушарий может быть нарушена, да, совместная работа полушарий может быть нарушена либо в результате патологии внутриутробного развития, либо в результате хирургической операции, или там какого-нибудь несчастного случая. Переучивать левшей на правую руку я не рекомендую категорически. Потому что все примеры, которые мне попадались с такими вот переучками, люди страдают на самом деле всю
У
жизнь.
меня
Да.
одноклассник, переученный левша, очень медленно писал диктанты, и в итоге, когда при поступлении в институт выяснил, что он левша, сказали, а зачем вас переучили, а тут в школе?
Я прошу прощения, если это кого-то заденет, да, переучивать левшей на правую руку — это примерно то же самое, что пытаться насильно вылечить гомосексуализм.
Вот почему я спросила, потому что буквально недавно наткнулась в общем, на результаты ребенка вот до и после диагностики, что вот его переучили на правую руку, причем не в возрасте так, начальная школа. У нее реально вот как было, как стало.
Один человек, это же не статистика.
Дело в том, что...
Нет, я просто думаю, возможно вообще...
Если позволите, я в последнюю ремарку вставлю, и нам надо уже, нас поджимает время. Один ребенок, да, один случай частный, мозг, тело, настолько все у нас индивидуально, что говорить о каких-то существенных результатах, да, и как это сказать, consistency, на то, что в исследованиях научных, если у вас 5000, 8000 подопытных людей, да, можно о чем-то говорить. Получилось у одного человека, это не значит, что у следующих 100 тоже будут хорошие результаты. Один человек все-таки это недостаточно. Но если вы мне дадите ссылку на это исследование, я с удовольствием почитаю.
Это же не исследование, а просто опыт работы.
Я переучена левша. Я сама себя переучила в детстве, потому что я стеснялась очень. В классе я была единственная левша. И это нисколько не мешает жить, причем наоборот. Навык, который приобретается правой рукой, сейчас он автоматически переходит на левом в зеркальном отражении. Все классно, все здорово, никаких проблем в этом нет.
Окей.
Так. Господа.
Please, short announcement. There is a coffee break on the second floor now, and in your bags you've got feedback forms. If you want to take part in the lottery, please fill in these forms and.
Okay, so thanks very much, and then have a coffee break.
Does anyone want the book? All right. So the people who are still here, let's try to decide whose question, or let's make it authoritative. My authoritative decision.
Okay. Do you want to pull the paper?
You just give me the notes. I will answer it happily. Can I just give out and? But I will answer it. I will answer it. I think I forgot yours was. Right. Anna Rashko asked about the age and how drawing affects it. That was a good question. Actually, I cannot remember the one that is bad, but I like your one. So Anna.